What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'm going to share with y'all some tips about how to create a strategic United States exit plan. So if you're just now tuning in, my name is Audrey and I moved from New York to Roatan in 2011. Now, I had no plan. There was nothing strategic about my move. And this is why I learned so much, because I hit so many roadblocks. And on the one hand, it was great for me to move that way, because being naive, being super confident allowed me to just jump at opportunities and be able to learn. So on the other hand, if I knew some things that took me 5, 8, or the whole 11 years to get, I could have gotten it during the first year. So on my platform, I'm sharing some tea, I'm sharing some tips for those of you who are thinking about moving abroad. And so I use my platform to share information that I learned, and that's how I decide to pay it forward. If you want to pay it forward, you can do so by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. Help your girl out, okay? So if this video interests you, or you know someone who might be thinking of moving and they don't know how to go about it, please share it with them. So my first piece of advice about creating this strategic U.S. exit plan is determining what is your why. Because no matter where you go, you're going to have pros and cons. So if you're running to another country because you're sick of your relationships, you think that there are better men or women in another country. Every country, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. All right? Women lie, men lie, numbers don't. So that shouldn't be a reason for you to go. And every country where you go to, there's going to be some type of con, and you have to just figure out or be willing to live with the cons of that particular country. This decision is so life-changing, whether you're moving for 3 months, 6 months, or you moving forever. It is a life-changing decision. So just like deciding a business partner or deciding who you're going to marry, the decision to move out of the United States is just as serious. And number two, think about what type of expat are you going to be. Now, I divided this into 3 categories. Number 1, you're leaving and never coming back. Like, I'm done with the U.S. That's it. It's over. The next one is a part-time expat. So you're probably going to spend 3 to 6 months in one country and then come back and forth to the United States. And the last one is a nomad. You're not going to be in one country for so long. So that can look like, let's say you're in Spain for 2 months, and then you go to Venezuela for 3 months, or you go to Jamaica the next 3 months, or you're traveling all through Central America, and every 2 months you change countries. And in between that, you're also going back and forth to the United States. So think about that first. What type of expat do you want to be? So once you determine what type of expat you want to be, whether you're the digital nomad or the part-time or the no time in US type of expat, the next thing you should think about is, what are your US obligations if you're going to be spending X amount of time in another country? So if, for example, if you're leaving and you don't want to come back, then you have to think about, are you going to close all of your bank accounts? Do you have to sell your house? And what does that look like? If you have children, how are you going to pass it down to them? If you have family, who's going to be in charge of this? And if you're a person who's going to go back and forth to the US, then you have to think about, maybe you want to have a mailing address. And so if you do decide to sell your house, then you have to think about, should I get a P.O. box, or do I just downsize and get and turn my apartment into an Airbnb for the time that I'm not there? And so I say this because a lot of people leave, and I myself, when I moved away from the US, it was like out of sight, out of mind. And so a lot of things, like with banking, with my school loans and documents that I had to pay attention to, I didn't pay attention to because out of sight, out of mind. But it slapped me in the face 5 or 6 years later. You know, so you don't want that to happen, especially if you have children, if you have a family, because depending on what type of expat you want to be, that's when you're going to make your list of needs and wants. So for example, a digital nomad, a nomad who's going from country to country. They don't have to think about the long-term housing. They don't have to think about getting residency in a particular country. Whereas, where you're leaving the U.S. and you're not coming back, you have to think about these things. Are you going to be renting? Are you going to be buying land? If you're back and forth because you have family, maybe considering how easy it is to get flights back and forth to the United States is important to you. So, but before you start figuring out your needs and wants, you should figure out what type of expat you want to be. The next one is, what country are you going to stay in? And so make your list of countries that you want to live in. And once you determine your final list, I highly suggest spending time in the country, but in increasing increments. So if you decided on one country, then go there for at least 1 month. And if you like it, or if you think 1 month wasn't enough time for you to get a real feel for living there, then go back to the U.S. and then come back and stay for 3 months. Then stay for 6 months. What that does is, you know how they say you don't know someone until you live with them? Well, you don't get a feel for daily life in another country unless you're actually living there and you go through one entire season. So if you decide to stay 1 year in a place, you're gonna know things that you wouldn't have known otherwise, like, is there a high season and is there a low season? What type of jobs are available during the highs and low seasons? If you're thinking about building a business, how would my business be affected with the traffic of people? What is the weather like? Do I want to move to a place where it's raining for 6 months out of the year? And so these are just questions or experiences you won't know until you are there for a specific or certain amount of time. That's why I highly suggest not making a decision to go and move somewhere just because you had a little 7 or 10-day vacation and you fell in love. That is called the honeymoon phase. A lot of people who move because they were so inspired during those 7 or 10 days, when they decide to move and they're 6 months into it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is not what I expected. And it's like, okay. Living somewhere is one thing and vacationing somewhere is a whole nother thing. So don't be those people. Next thing you should think about is money, your income source. How are you going to sustain yourself? Are you going to save, have all of your life savings and just move to this country and depend on that? Are you going to work in the country? And if that's the case, then you have to look into work visas and what does that look like? Are you a digital nomad? Do you work from home? If you do work from home, then you need to be living in a place that has good internet service. Make sure you determine what income source, because a lot of these countries that you do want to move to, they aren't as stable as the United States is. And I don't know if that's the right term. Maybe the right term is organized, but there are many conveniences in the United States that are not in other countries. Not to say that the other countries are wrong, but it is a different way of life. And I've seen many U.S. citizens in Roatan, especially when it comes to banking or doing business, they're complaining and they're like, well, in the United States, and I'm like, this is not the United States, it's Honduras. And we're on Roatan Island. I've seen this happen so many times. So once you determine your income source, I highly suggest partnering up with a financial advisor to help you determine or make right decisions, because one of the reasons why many people leave the United States is because the cost of living elsewhere is so much lower. But if you're going to be saving so much more money than living in a major city like New York or Los Angeles, what are you going to do with that extra money? Okay, if that's the case, then you can be investing and letting that money grow in interest and all of this stuff. I'm not a financial advisor, but if I knew then what I know now, I would have been a millionaire. If I would have sat down with a financial advisor in 2011 and they would have helped me to organize my income and figure out where to put this money and that money, especially because living here saved me so much, I would have been a millionaire. So please take advice. So now you know where you're moving, you kind of know or have an idea how you want to organize your life, how you want to make money. Before you move to the place or before you take this 1 month or 3 months exploration trip, you can go to Facebook and or Instagram. I suggest Facebook for this actually, but there are many Facebook groups for the different countries where you're moving to. So for example, in Roatan, they have a Facebook page called Expats Living on Roatan. They have a page called Expats Living in Costa Rica, Expats Living in Panama. And so you can join these Facebook pages and start to see the comments of people and the questions and the complaints to start getting an idea. Now, disclaimer, do not take other people's experience as the experience to expect in this country. So I'm just saying this to help you create like a list of pointers or questions that you might want to ask when you move to the country, or a list of things that you might want to look into. So if someone is complaining on this page, on these pages or these forums about the school system, for example, if they have children, then you might want to have that complaint in your list of questions when you go to that country and you start interviewing with different schools for your child. Whereas if you didn't see this complaint, it wouldn't have even been a thought to write down on that interview that you do with them. You see, so just use it as reference only, but not as actual proof of the experience. You understand? Okay, and last but not least, when you move to the country, when you're in the actual exploration phase, try to shadow someone. If you meet an expat, if you meet someone, especially someone in your demographic, shadowing someone who was in your same situation. So now that I'm a mom, for example, if that would have been me now, I would have looked on these pages and found someone who's a married woman with children, for example, approach her and ask her questions about what she went through, you know. And like I said, always for reference and not for proof of the experience that you should expect. So yes, that's pretty much it, you guys. Those are my tips for creating your strategic U.S. exit plan. I'm also going to leave a link to a video I made a couple of months ago, I think it was last year actually, for children of parents who are from another country. So if you're thinking about moving to another country where your parents are from, you have birth rights. So if your parents didn't apply for your citizenship in that country, you can still do it as an adult. And there are lots of benefits to becoming a citizen of these countries where you're gonna move to, like credit. So I'll leave a link to that video in the description box, also up here somewhere. And thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Make sure you let me know in the comments below, or you email me what other content or questions you have about moving outside of the US.